Arch Manning. Touchdown, Mustangs.
We're not done yet, boys.
Hello and welcome into the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. I am your host, Carter Yates, and joining me from beautiful Austin, Texas is senior writer Mike Craven. Craven, how are you feeling today? I feel like it's your Michael Jordan flu game today.
Yeah, not feeling great. The 1-year-old got sick on Saturday, a few days after a cousin's birthday party. It has now trickled its way to me. As we're recording this, I'm noticing that I have some of her snot here.
Oh no!
On my sweater. So it's like you said before we started recording. This could be my Michael Jordan flu game, or it could have been one that I maybe should have called in for.
Well, I guess we'll find out. So join along with us for the ride. We are talking about Fan Duel releasing the first season over-under win total projections for all the Power 4 teams in Texas. And let's start from highest over-under to lowest over-under. This gives us a good point, Craven, to talk about offseason vibe check and what we expect of these programs. So Texas Tech is first. They're above Texas and A&M, and I guess it makes sense because they made the college football playoff last year in a historic season. They are at 11.5 over-under, which means if you're betting the over, you believe they're going to go undefeated and win the Big 12 conference.
Yeah, I mean, if you take the over, it's 12-0. You take the under, you're giving yourself an out there. You need to remember these win total projections, especially the ones that come out in spring, are mostly about perception of your schedule and the road that you have going on. Texas Tech at 11.5. When we get to like A&M, they're 8.5. That doesn't mean that Vegas thinks Texas Tech is 3 games better than Texas A&M. It means that they believe that schedule is 3 games easier than Texas Tech's. And we can run through the schedule here.
It's not great.
For Texas Tech.
Well, it's great for Texas Tech fans, but it's not great for college football fans watching on a Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, their non-con is Abilene Christian, Oregon State, and Sam Houston. Their road games in the Big 12 are Colorado, Cincinnati, a Cincinnati team they just took the starting quarterback from, Oklahoma State, and Baylor. So an easy Big 12 schedule that doesn't include BYU, doesn't include Utah, no road games at places like Kansas State or West Virginia, that kind of the tricky historical places to go play. You get TCU at home at the end of the year. You get Arizona at home. You get Houston at home. I would venture to say the toughest game on the schedule that's not in Lubbock is at Arizona State or at Cincinnati or at Colorado. Like there's just not a lot there outside of what you're going to face in Lubbock. AT&T Jones Stadium, one of the toughest places to play. So I get leaning towards Texas Tech going undefeated as somebody who's making the magazine right now and coming up with what my projections for the season are. It's hard to find a loss in there, but it's also really hard to run the table. It's something that Texas Tech has literally never done in their football program history, at least the modern history of it. So I don't know where you stand with it. I think they're better than everybody on the schedule. But as we saw last year, it's easy to pick up an injury or two, go on the road, and get beat by a team that you probably shouldn't.
You don't want to bet against Texas Tech just saying surely they're going to trip up somewhere. Like, I think on paper they have the tools to go 12-0, the schedule, the roster they've built in this offseason. So I don't want to say, well, they're going to go under 11.5 just because probability's sake, an injury, 1 or 2 spots there. But I'm also going to do that, Craven, because I just don't know how easy it is to go undefeated in any league in college football anymore with the parity of the transfer portal and NIL. I think we've seen that even in the top teams in the SEC, like every team is going with 1 or 2 losses this year. And I know Texas Tech is playing in the Big 12, and that's part of what factors into the calculus, but just for probability's sake, it's really, really, really hard to go undefeated, even if you're an amazing football team.
Yeah, no doubt. I think if I was betting my own money on it right now, I would go under. And that's not to say I think Texas Tech has a similar season as they had last year. I think they go 11-1. They win the Big 12 going away. They get to the quarterfinals, and we'll see if their ceiling is higher than it was last year. Now that they have Brendan Sorsby, getting Quentin Joyner back at running back, got Terrence Carter, so maybe they have more weapons on the outside. But I'm not betting on a single team to beat Texas Tech. I'm betting on any of the teams to beat Texas Tech. You just need one. And what if Sorsby gets dinged up for a game or two, like we saw Baron Morton do, and then Will Hammond's the quarterback on the road, and they went and lost that game last year against Arizona State. That could happen again this year, especially with Will Hammond's health being kind of up in the air. Who is the backup if Sorsby gets dinged up? And as we know, Brennan Sorsby is a runner. He's a physical runner who's gonna get out of the pocket. He's gonna get hit by linebackers. He's gonna throw his body into those situations. The schedule is great. Texas Tech going 12-0 wouldn't surprise me, but that's a hard bet to make, man.
It is a damning fact about their schedule that their hardest road game might be against a team whose quarterback they took this offseason.
Well, because I think on paper people will point to the Baylor game. Dave Aranda might not even be there by the time they play November 21st, right? Like it could be a checked out situation in Baylor, and that's true. Like their last 4 games of the season are West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Baylor, and TCU. Maybe TCU's in the Big 12 running going into that season finale. The last couple of years they haven't been, and so you're not playing teams with huge stakes. Like last year, you play BYU, you play Utah, like teams that are competing for the Big 12, that are competing to get to that college football playoff spot. By the time you get past Arizona on Halloween, it might be a thing where you're playing teams that are looking more towards 2027 than they're caring about playing Texas Tech. So I guess the question for me is, do you think Texas Tech is better this year than they were last year? If so, maybe taking the over is a good bet. I think they're better at quarterback, but I just, for me, you lose David Bailey, you lose Romello Height, you lose Lee Hunter, you lose Jacob Rodriguez. Like, are we going to see a defense be that elite? And all it takes is one of these teams popping for 35 points, Texas Tech's offense having a down game, and you get upset 35-28. It happens all the time in college football. If that defense isn't going to be, the leading and like stop rate defense in the country and just what they were last year, if they take a slight step backwards, that opens up the floodgates for one of these teams to come in there and surprise them. And 11-1, still a great record. You still go to Arlington. You still got a chance to go to the college football playoff if you win the Big 12. It's a tough bet. 11.5 is a tough one.
Yeah,
but if it was 10.5, you would hammer the other
for
side,
sure.
right? So like it has to be 11.5. That's a tough bet.
And especially, too, at the back half of the season, you talk about they'll be playing teams who could be on to 2027. That could also hurt Texas Tech if they seem to be locked up in the Big 12 championship race. Do they have a letdown? Now, Joey McGuire was so awesome last year not having those letdowns for the Texas Tech program. But if a loss wouldn't hurt them at the end, you're still screwed on your bet, and that's just total hypothetical nonsense by me, basically. But I could see that happening.
Yeah, it's human nature. It's hard to run the table. Like even in the ACC when Clemson was dominant, even the Big 12 when Oklahoma and Texas were kind of dominating the leagues, like it's just hard to go undefeated no matter what league that you were in. And then there's tricky games, right? Like you have a back-to-back at Oklahoma State, at Baylor. Well, if everything hits right at Oklahoma State, like that's an offense that can put 40 on you. Mm-hmm. Like that's, and Eric Morris is a former Texas Tech Red Raider. Like he's going to be geared up for that game and come up for some plays. And so, Oklahoma State's a dangerous one. And then we talk about, maybe Dave Aranda's not even at Baylor and they're playing for 2027 come November 21st. What if it goes the opposite way? What if DJ Lagway is DJ Lagway that we saw at Willis, that is now 5-star prospect, rejuvenated his career? Joe Klanderman and that defense gets better over there. Maybe Baylor's kind of a sneaky, dangerous team that coming off of a trip to Stillwater, now you got to go to Waco. Like maybe that's one of those hiccups. So it doesn't take much to look at the schedule and go like, I can see one loss and in this bet, that's all you need to find.
Or the Big 12 Conference unofficially leads in the stat of we thought this schedule was horrible and it's actually amazing. That's why they got rid of the Big 12 Conference media poll, because Arizona State went from preseason ranked last to first, winning the Big 12. And now they were by far from the only team to do that. It happened multiple years in a row. I am concerned about the top line pieces on Texas Tech's defense that they lost, because that defense was so awesome last year. But I did see ESPN, Heather Dinich reported that Joey McGuire said he actually thinks they're bigger along the line of scrimmage than they were last year. Case in point, Craven, they took out all the dumbbells under 40 pounds in the weight room. Did you have a take on this, Craven? What'd you think?
I think like most things on social media, it was overblown. I would imagine Texas Tech has weights under 40 pounds if you're doing your rotator cuff or something like that, right? I think it was more kind of the spirit of it, right? Like we want big, strong guys who lift a lot of weights in the weight room, more so than like you can't go find a 15-pound dumbbell if you need to. But context and nuance in 2026 on social media is not something you're going to find.
Visit Lubbock is a proud partner of Dave Campbell's Texas Football and the Gambling Gauchos podcast. Visit Lubbock has put together their guide for all things to do, can't miss experiences, and where to stay if you're traveling into Lubbock for the game. Thank you again to Visit Lubbock, and to learn more, head on over to visitlubbock.org. I will say, though, counterpoint, having to be the guy to ask, like, tug on the coach's shirt and say, like, hey, can I get a 15-pound dumbbell? Actually, is that anywhere? That is really tough, too.
I just want to do a couple rotator cuff things here. I don't want to do it with 40 pounds. That speaks to me as somebody with a damaged AC joint.
It was one of those deals where you don't have to have a take about everything, I think. So I sat that one out. There was a ton of Twitter doctors and Twitter personal trainers in the comments. Also, JJ Watt, who did make a good point, because Adam Brenneman, who does great work at CBS Sports, he tweeted out the clip. And it's smart to tweet out that clip. I mean, it's going to go viral like he planned for. And he said, love this, like no shortcuts. And JJ Watt was saying, actually, that is the definition of a shortcut, just going up to 40 pounds on a lateral raise or whatever when you can't do that yet.
And the funniest part of the JJ Watt comment is the first one, or at least the first one that showed up on my, like in terms of reply to JJ Watt, is some anonymous Twitter guy going, learn how to lift, bro. if you're not using weights over 40 pounds and you're in college athletics, like you shouldn't even be there. And it's like, this is JJ Watt. Like I am not the biggest JJ Watt fan in the world, but like, the weight room is not a place that I would question JJ Watt, right? Yeah. Like he lived there, former 2-star that worked his way into NFL Hall of Famer. So it just shows that social media is like the worst, honestly.
Although I go the other way too, of thinking, I don't know if there's any exercise in college that they'd be doing where you need to go less than 40 pounds. I understand Craven the rotator cuff stuff for like rehab, but in terms of just all the compound lifts, are they really going to be needing to use 35-pound dumbbells? I mean, I do personally, but I'm also not playing at Texas Tech.
Oh, well, we could derail this podcast. What are you using under 40 on the dumbbell for? Or, I mean, on
the lateral raise. I use the 35. And that's when, instead of just standing straight up and lifting my arms out like wings, like I'm fully leaning, grabbing onto the handle and swinging as fast, as hard as I can, no form whatsoever, to get the 35-pounder.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a fair point. That's a fair point. I was about to have a conversation with you. I was like, all those muscles, and you just use it, you front squatting 35 pounds over there, Carter. We'll clip that.
All right, so over or under, Craven? You going under on this one? Because just for probability's sake, no way they can run the table?
Yeah, I'm going under just because it is hard to get 18 to 23-year-old kids locked in every single week for a full season. I don't care how easy your schedule is. I'm going to bet the under 12-0.
Yeah, I'm going to do the same thing as well, because even though the schedule looks easy, it's impossible to predict in the Big 12. And almost impossible for a lot of teams to run the table, even though Texas Tech does have the best shot of doing so, which is why they're at 11.5. I think they're going to make the college football playoff, but I don't think they run the table. All right, let's go to Texas. So we think that Texas Tech is going to go under 11.5, but still make the college football playoffs, or at least I think that. Texas's over-under is 9.5, which basically means if you bet over, you think they're making the college football playoff. If you bet under, they're going 9-3 and not making the college football playoff. Craven, what say you?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. We have the conversation a lot, and by we, I mean just like college football media and fans at large, about kind of the 10-win barrier to get into the college football playoff. Like, will there be a 9-win team that gets there? If there is a schedule that can get it done, it's this one. Texas plays Ohio State, at Tennessee, Oklahoma neutral, Ole Miss, at LSU, at A&M. If you go 9-3 and you don't lose to a Florida, right? If you don't lose to a team that is not going bowling, like there is a legit argument to be made that this 9-3 on this schedule, depending on how it looks, could make the college football playoff. I was wrong on Texas last year, and I shouldn't have been. Like, you look back on 2025, and you can see the tea leaves between the schedule and the first year starting quarterback replacing 4 players along the offensive line. Like, it's easy to look back and go, okay, Texas was going to be a 9-3 team. I think that they're 10-2 or better this year. I think I'm leaning over. Arch Manning's got experience. They address stuff through the portal in a way that they didn't going into 2025. That offense should score 35 to 40 points a game, even if Will Muschamp's defense isn't any better than what Pete Kwiatkowski's was, if it can just stay the same, I think Texas figures out a way to win 10 games, get back into the college football playoff, and maybe even competes for an SEC championship.
I think Texas going over 9.5 is the bet I am most confident about of all the over-unders in the Power Four. Because what happens if they don't go over this, Craven? This is the most all-in they have been at the University of Texas in a decade. I feel like with the Will Muschamp, a defensive coordinator, with the transfer portal class they brought in with Raleek Brown, Hollywood Smothers, Cam Coleman. I mean, these guys are pushing all the chips in the middle of the table. I think they have to go 10-2.
Yeah, I think one of my big deals for this season is if Texas doesn't make it to the college football playoff, Steve Sarkisian's in the NFL.
Yeah,
right. Like
he's the Jacksonville Jaguars offensive coordinator.
Yeah, or finds a head coaching job somewhere if somebody wants to give him one of those. They went all in. He replaces a really good, respected defensive coordinator, Pete Kwiatkowski, with a guy who hasn't called plays in 10 years, basically, as a full-time defensive coordinator. They go all in through the transfer portal and get rid of, a couple of really good players at wide receiver to bring in Cam Coleman. They bring in the 2 running backs. Like, this is a $40 million roster, and there aren't many of those in college football, and anybody who has one and doesn't make the college football playoff is going to be under scrutiny. If you go back-to-back years of not making the college football playoff with all of these resources, you're still calling plays offensively. I just think the heat is going to be turned up on Sark. This is a huge year for his Texas program. The floor isn't like this. The baseline is just making the playoff, right? That's how it feels down here in Austin, where it's like an understood thing. Texas is going at least 10-2. Really what they're looking for is an SEC championship and a couple of wins in the college football playoff. Like, it's asinine to be national title or bust now. Back when the 4 team was around, maybe you could do that. With the 12 team, just so many variables. You need to get there. You need to win a game or two. You need to be playing for an SEC championship. Like, this roster suggests that kind of outcome. If you don't get it, there is going to be a lot of looking at Sark, and there's nowhere else to turn. There's no one else to blame. You've already made the move at defensive coordinator. You've had Quinn Ewers, who might be an NFL starter next year at quarterback, and then Arch Manning, and what you have to show for it is a couple semis. I just don't think that's enough. I think the heat would really be on Sark if he doesn't get to at least 10-2 and into the CFP.
And by the way, they've attacked this offseason. He knows the heat will be on him. I don't think he's shying away from that whatsoever. And part of the biggest question mark, like we talked about last week, let's cover it real quick again for those who missed, is that offensive line, Craven. You just came out with the 5 biggest questions in the spring football window. For Texas, it's the offensive line. Manning faced the most pressure of any SEC QB, ranked 112th in the nation in tackles for loss allowed. Got to keep an eye on that offensive line, Craven, to see if Texas can reach their ceiling this year.
Yeah, I think their projected starting 5 is really good. It's the depth behind that. And as we know, this is a brutal physical sport. You're going to need an offensive lineman number 6, 7, and 8 somewhere along the line in this SEC run. We just talked about the schedule that they're facing. You even got Florida. You got a trip to Missouri. Arkansas has got a new coach who knows what that looks like. Like, it is a tough schedule. You're going to need the depth there. And then Lawrence Seymour, who's an All-American transferring in from Western Kentucky, he's not arriving till summer, and there's still a little bit of a toss-up on whether he's going to get that year of eligibility or not. And if he doesn't, now all of a sudden, offensive lineman number 6 is your starting left or right guard, and then the depth gets hit even more from there. And so I like what they have at tackle. Trevor Gooseby is a future top 10 NFL draft pick. I think he's the best left tackle in college football. Melvin Siani, the transfer they got from Wake Forest, really good. Connor Robertson at center, I think turned a corner last year in 2025. Can Brandon Baker be the right guard you think he's going to be? And can you get Lawrence Seymour that extra year of eligibility? Like, those are huge for the Longhorns.
Over the weekend, I saw that Russell Wilson was taking his stepson Future out to Austin and to look at the program. What class is Future Wilson in? Can he help out next year to get them over that 9.5 win total?
I don't know anything about Future Wilson. All I know is that if another man is taking your son on a college visit, you have failed as a father. That is my only opinion on that situation there.
That is the biggest litmus test for, like, are you mature as a person, for people who are like, oh, dude, Russell Wilson, like, taking his stepson Future, like, being the father, stepping up as a father. Like, what a loser. It's like, no, actually, the other guy's kind of the loser in this situation.
The other guy is definitely the loser in this situation. Shout out all stepdads out there, by the way. Somebody who was raised by a stepdad who adopted me. I wasn't born with the last name Craven. I was adopted into that. Stepdads who are there for their kids are great. Russell Wilson, I think Russell Wilson is one of the corniest, fakest athletes that I've ever seen deal with anybody. Right? I'm not here to praise Russell Wilson, but yeah, I mean, taking care of your kid when somebody else won't is a big thing.
Yeah, he's not the stepfather. He's the father that stepped up. Did not take his son to A&M in College Station. However, that might be next on future Wilson's college trip list. Texas A&M is 8.5 for the over/under. At first, this kind of looks disrespectful because the Aggies were 11-0 at one point. They made the college football playoff. And then, Craven, I was reading your article on TexasFootball.com going over these over-unders, and you lay it out, man. They got to replace the offensive coordinator, who's now a head coach at Kansas State, SEC Defensive Player of the Year at edge, Cassius Howell, two-time team captain, Torian York, who was kind of the heartbeat of that defense, the best wide receiver, and then also 4 starters on the offensive line. A ton of question marks in College Station.
Yeah, I didn't even mention Albert Regis, a defensive tackle. You're trying to get better stopping the run. You're losing your nose tackle and your middle linebacker. And so that is going to be tough. You mentioned all the offensive stuff. And then remember what we just listed as Texas Tech's last 4 games? Here are A&M's last 5. At Alabama, home to South Carolina, home to Tennessee, at Oklahoma, home to Texas. My goodness. It is easy. And that, they go to LSU. They host Arizona State at home. It is a tough schedule, especially at the back end. Mike Elko in this A&M program has overachieved the first 2 years that he has been there. If they go 9-3 or even 10-2 against this schedule, he should be SEC Coach of the Year. With what they've lost, what they're bringing back, and who they're facing, and over here would be an incredible year for Texas A&M. I think for that reason, I'm leaning under. We've talked plenty on this podcast about kind of my opinions of Marcel Reed. I got blasted on social media for a whole week for having him 6th in the Texas 10s with quarterbacks. It's going to be a lot of Marcel Reed this year. You don't have Casey Concepcion. You don't have a Joe Moore Awards semifinalist or finalist offensive line. In front of you, you have a new play caller. He's going to have to be the offense in year 3. So far, I haven't seen that against the best teams, and their schedule is loaded with best teams this year.
It's going to be tough for Texas A&M narrative-wise because their season last year was amazing, but there were a lot of people, a lot of haters, I'll say, who actually – I was going to say it's a lot of haters for hating on the schedule and saying how weak it was and that they were schedule frauds. I know they did play most of the bottom half teams in the SEC, but I believe that team was really good still. They weren't just a schedule fraud. But now, if they go 7-5 this year, after losing all those guys, that would still be honestly kind of a good year, or at least a par for the course year, given how tough that schedule is. So the narrative is going to be out there on them if they go 7-5 against this really hard schedule, almost detracting from last year's team, I believe, unfairly.
Yeah, I mean, for Mike Elko and the staff this year, it's beating Texas, right? It's like taking a step forward, showing you can lose all of that and kind of remain who you are as a program. And then the big thing is to go and beat the Longhorns. You're 0-2 as the head coach, haven't beaten them in 15 plus years. Some of that's not on A&M, right? They didn't play for 13 of those years. And so you need to beat Texas. And if you can beat Texas, you probably get to 9-3. I mean, going to LSU, that's a toss up, just with how they've turned over that roster. Lane Kiffin playing in Death Valley. That's going to be one of the first big games there for Kiffin at home. That's going to be a tough one. But if you're 8-4 and your losses are at LSU, at Alabama, at Oklahoma, and one of Tennessee and Texas, that's not a bad season. That's a respectable, solid season. But you're still 8-4 and lost 3 games more than you did the year before. That's going to hurt kind of the perception of it, even if the context is left out of it.
100%. So the next team at an 8.5 over/under win total, that's the SMU Mustangs, whose head coach, Rhett Lashley, was just named the #1 underrated coach in the nation by CBS Sports. The last 3 years, they've been 31-10, 5-3 against the top 25 teams. Well-deserved, in my opinion. And he just told ESPN's Heather Dinich that this team, 2026 SMU, has the potential to be the best he's had at SMU. Craven, I mean, I'm going to agree with him just going off of what I think of Rhett Lashley as a coach.
Yeah, I agree with the most underrated coach in the country. Definitely the most underrated coach in the state of Texas. Has done an excellent job. Has made it to where there are young people now that don't even know SMU is not supposed to compete for conference championships. Right? I mean, they have been incredible the last 3 years. And then this is a lot of this conversation today is playing the schedule game. They don't play Miami. They don't play Clemson. Maybe not playing Clemson is a bad thing, right? Maybe that's an automatic win for the Mustangs that they wish they were on the schedule. What's funky about the SMU schedule, though, is like they play at Florida State to start. They play at Louisiana in week 3. Those are probably their toughest ACC games. Like the rest of the schedule in the ACC is Boston College, Virginia, Cal, at Syracuse, Virginia Tech, which we'll see what they are under a new head coach, Wake Forest that beat SMU at home last year, and then at Stanford. You got that Notre Dame game floating around November 21st on the road that's probably a loss, at least on paper. But it's hard to find 3 losses on the schedule on paper when you look at it. I think it's the most talented team SMU has had since he's been there, just because of how they recruited from the high school ranks. But talent doesn't always equal production, and they're going to need a lot of those young guys like Jalen Cooper to really step up and become frontline players. They have more talent than maybe some of the guys they've had previously because they've been able to organically recruit from the high school ranks in a better way. But you're still asking a lot of those underclassmen, a lot of those second, third year players to step up and have a role that they've never had before. You have a new defensive coordinator. So I've gone back and forth on this one. I think this is a tough one. But last year's SMU team almost made it to the ACC championship, and I think that was a step back for the program. I think this year's team is going to win 9 or 10 games and be right back in the hunt because of the schedule, especially if they can survive September.
I got to agree with you, Craven. I'm hammering the over 8.5. Also, CBS Sports did a scheduled visit to SMU's campus and facilities, and their biggest viral clip on social media was Rhett Lashley having all the coaching staff put photos of their family outside the coaching office, which did not have the viral media storm and Twitter bro football doctors out in the comment section for that. It would have been funny, though, if people were like, this is soft. This soft program.
Yeah. It is indicative of what they do, though. Like I have been at SMU campus in those coaches' office a lot since I've had this job, specifically since Lashley has been the head coach. There are at least 2 or 3 coaches' kids in there every single time I've ever gone in there. Those who don't know, Lashley has 2 sets of twins, which is like more rare than getting struck by lightning. And so, like, I think that they're really engaged. They're about that, and that's one of the things I love about the younger coaches, is it feels like they don't have that mentality of we need to be up here for 21 hours and we need to lock out our loved ones. Like, there is room for family and also winning football games, and like working that hard doesn't equate to winning all of the time. And so, shout out to SMU for having that. And I think most of the programs we cover have a pretty similar outlook on balancing work life and family.
What's more impressive, getting SMU to win their first conference championship since 1984 and then competing right away in the ACC, or having 2 sets of twins?
The 2 sets of twins, because you can't
so.
plan. You can't plan for that. That's just God's work or whatever you believe there, right? Like that, you can't ask for that. I've always wondered. I asked him this, like I think on a podcast that he came into the studio one time, like if they were going to try, for a third time to see. And the wife, Lauren, was like, no,
yeah,
absolutely not doing that. So
yeah, 2 sets of twins. That's a war zone right there. Both during the process and after the process when they're toddlers. They're all great kids now, but come on, raising 2 sets of twins. That's, doing the Lord's work.
I have one 1-year-old, and I don't know how you could possibly do it. Like, I would need a lot more money to have a nanny. Maybe that's the answer, but I don't know how it could be possible.
Well, yeah, now that he got that raise at SMU, you probably get a nanny. So I'm sure he could get that
maybe
before,
maybe I can text him.
All right.
Did you see the latest podcast, brother? I got like snot on my shoulder. Like, can you send me some help? Like, please.
All right. Another coach who I think was on that CBS Sports most underrated head coaches in all college football lists, Willie Fritz at the University of Houston. They are over under 7.5 win total right now. And Craven, you wrote on the article on TexasFootball.com that it was the toughest call for you, whether or not they're going to go over or under. Why was this the toughest one?
Because I can make an argument both directions. pretty easily without having to fake it. On one hand, they are the only Power 4 team that we cover that is returning their head coach, both coordinators and starting quarterback. They won 10 games last year. Willie Fritz is an incredible football coach. Like, they got their defense really turned a corner, it felt like, last year, and played really well, especially when they were getting turnovers. When Wigman wasn't turning the ball over early in the season, Houston was excellent. And I think they're more talented. They bring in a couple of instant starters along the offensive line that are going to be tremendous. I think Boswell and Hurst are both all Big 12 type players along the offensive line.
Love Texas, love football, then you'll love College Station, home of the Aggies and so much more. Come eat, play, relax, and say howdy to one heck of a good time. Plan your trip at visitcollegestation.com.
If Mekhi Hughes hits and becomes the player he was at Tulane under this staff, then all of a sudden they have a run game. Wigman doesn't have to run the ball as much, and maybe he doesn't throw as many turnovers down the stretch. And so there is an easy argument to be made that this Cougars team is better than last year's that won 9 games in the regular season and smashed their over, which was 5.5, I think by week 7. They were 6-1. And so, like, I can see them being a dark horse to compete at the Big 12. On the other hand, though, there are 2 types of Big 12 schedules. There is ones that go on the road 4 times, and there is ones that go on the road 5 times. And Houston has one of those 5 times. And it starts with a trip to Texas Tech in week 3. They go to Kansas State. They go to Utah. They go to Colorado. They go to West Virginia. On the football field, Tech, Kansas State, and Utah, those are hard games, obviously. No matter, you could play those on the moon, and those are going to be hard games for Houston to win. Colorado's not a great team. West Virginia wasn't a great team last year, but if you talk to coaches around the Big 12, those are the 2 places they don't like going. Colorado because of the altitude, West Virginia because of the craziness. And so those are 5 very tough road games within the schedule that they're going to have to navigate. Then you play Cincinnati at home, you play Baylor at home, Oklahoma State team that we don't know a ton about. It is very easy to think that Houston could win 6 or 7 games. It is also easy to think Houston could win 9 or 10 games. And to me, that's what makes it so tough.
What scares me about Houston is that they went 7-1 last year in 1-score games. So I know they completely smashed their over, but there are a lot of coin flips out there of where they kind of have the same roughly season, just a little bit better instead of smashing their over last year. And I think part of that is, how much of that is just Willie Fritz is an amazing football coach, which we both believe, and how much of that is luck that's going to turn around the next season? We saw this with TCU going just hypnotoad mode in 1-score games, going to the 2022 national championship game, and then going 5-7 the next year.
Yeah, we've seen it at UTSA where, Jeff Traylor and that team were incredible in 1-score games. They've been good on the road, and then all of a sudden they're now a 500 team because they've started losing some of those 1-score games and can't win on the road. And so when you have the kind of the regression to the mean that might be expected for Houston, when you lose 2 or 3 of those coin flip games, and now all of a sudden you're going on the road to play big time football against big time football teams, I get why I thought the over under was going to be 8.5 or 8. 7.5 makes it interesting. It's a hard one. It is definitely a hard one. I think it depends on what you think Mekhi Hughes is going to be, and it probably depends on what you think the Big 12 is going to be, right? Like, is Kansas State with a new head coach, with Avery Johnson back, like, what do you think the Wildcats are going to be? Same with Utah, right? Like, their head coach is at Michigan now. What do you think Utah is going to be? And so a lot of this comes down to what you think the rest of the Big 12 is. I think I know what Houston is, and I don't know if a team – what would the record of last year's team be against this year's schedule? I think is a good question to ask. And it's probably 7-5, 8-4, not 9-3. And so at that point, this becomes a very difficult bet. This is one I would stay away from. I think in the article I leaned over, and that's just because of the continuity.
Yeah, I love their continuity. I love Willie Fritz. I love the direction the program's going. In my gut, I feel it's going to be the over. And that's why I'm taking the under. I think they're going under 7.5.
Yeah, I don't think that would be crazy. Like, you look at a team that won 10 games, and you see their over under at 7.5 with what they bring back, and you go like, why are they disrespecting Houston? But I think it's exactly what we've talked about. I think it's, you think they overachieved last year. They won so many 1-score games, and there's going to be a regression to the mean against a schedule that is tougher. And that schedule last year, just like we talked about for A&M, like, it's not up to the programs. Like, sometimes it's just luck. Like, it just breaks that way. And last year's schedule broke really well for Houston. On paper, this year seems to be a much tougher road. Can they win all those razor thin kind of toss up games? It's hard to bet on that.
Okay, let's round it out in the Big 12 here. TCU and Baylor are both at 6.5, which is the lowest win total projection out of all the Big 12, all the Texas Power 4 teams. Craven, why is TCU always like 6.5 win total when they've won 9 games in 2 years in a row?
Yeah, I've made a lot of money on TCU overs since I got this job. Like that 22 season felt like an easy over. I didn't know they were going to go 12-0 and reach the Big 12 championship in the national title game, but that seemed easy. Last year seems easy. This is another one that seems like it's a pretty easy TCU over, at least on paper. If you think Jaden Craig is solid and you believe that the offensive coordinator is going to be an improvement, which I do. I think Gordon Samus is an improvement over Kendall Briles, a bigger one than they drop at quarterback. Right? I think TCU got better at OC than they got worse at quarterback, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does.
And so I think TCU is going to be better offensively. They won't be as one-dimensional. They're going to run the ball more. I think the offensive line is going to be more physical. I think they're going to stick to that. They're going to take pressure off of Craig in that passing attack. You always trust the Sonny Dykes team to have wide receivers and have quarterbacks. So I think they're going to put up points offensively. I don't know. If we look at the end of the year, CFBstats.com, I believe TCU is going to handle its business offensively, scoring offense, all that kind of stuff. Defensively, I think they have a chance to be really good. Like, I'm a believer of like continuity on the defensive side of the ball. And they're going into year 3 under Andy Avalos. They got better in year 1. They got better in year 2. I expect that to continue into year 3. They did lose a lot defensively. Like, you're losing both of your starting linebackers who were excellent players for multiple years. Bud Clark somehow finally ran out of eligibility. But they have some talent on that side of the ball. They know what they're doing on that side of the ball. I think TCU is, again, one of the more underrated teams in the Big 12. They just have to avoid those just kind of like scratch your head losses, which they've had the last couple of years. Like, they haven't been good at closing games, but to me, that's a function of not being able to run the football. And if they can run the football, a lot of that stuff takes care of itself. I'm just betting on Jeremy Payne and the offensive coordinator to get that done and figure out how to run the ball better.
And you mentioned how much you love the defense coming back with Andy Avalos for his 3rd year. And also Jamel Johnson, the safety, who's the number 1 rated safety per you in the position rankings. Craven, was that the pick over Bryce Pollock, who got the most flack maybe on social media? I'm curious now that all the Texas 10s are out. What was the one that got everyone the most fired up? I think it's Jamel Johnson or Marcel Reed from the outside looking in.
Yeah, it was definitely those two. I haven't workshopped this take, so I probably shouldn't do it on the podcast. Texas Tech fans have flipped a switch, my friend. Like,
really? How so?
They used to be like happy to be included and happy to be written about and happy to like have anybody who like thought they were going to be good, right? And like they had this big season last year, and all of a sudden ranking a guy as the top returning cornerback and number 2 at defensive back means that you're a hater.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like
I feel that.
In real time, they are turning into the fan base, Texas, that they have made fun of and like hated on forever for being like the spoiled brats who like want everything like their way in the off season. And it's just been a weird, it's just funny how success kind of brings that about.
It's crazy. 1 year, man. Like 1 year of always a proud program, always had a lot of fun teams, beat Texas, Michael Crabtree catch, had some great years in Mike Leach run, but last year was the first conference championship since 1955. And you win it and just flip the switch the next offseason.
Yeah, I had a fan like DM me and be like, "You just don't know anything about Texas Tech football and like what's coming." And it's like, my guy, we put their head coach on a cover before he coached a college game as a head coach. You know what I mean? Like, I just think of all the places you can come at as being Texas Tech, it's not the place that was writing about them before 2025. Like, go at all of the sites that did not write a thing about Texas Tech until last year. Not me, who has their cornerback ranked as like the 2nd player. And also, like, you don't watch the other teams.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
There's not many Tech fans that are like breaking down Jamel Johnson tape. They didn't play last year, so they'd never watched Jamel Johnson play really at all. So I try not to take it too seriously. I try not to look at the comments too much, but people send them to me, and I try to laugh at them.
Yeah. Texas Tech fans have told me before I need to get a different job. So, I mean, honestly, fair. Like, I get it. I understand sometimes, but Yes, they are flipping a switch for sure, Craven. Okay, let's do.
Well, 1 second on the TCU thing before we move on.
Yeah.
How much does the Ireland game affect what you think that they're going to be or not be this year? Because we have seen that derail seasons before.
Yeah.
And that's my worry, is that they go to Ireland, they lose to North Carolina, and it looks like 2023 where that opening season loss to Colorado just let all the air out of the tire.
It scares the hell out of me. I mean, I said it on, I think it was last podcast. They all bleed together, Craven, as you know. But I've said this before of like, you look at the Ireland game's history. It's 2 years ago, the DJ Uiagalelei Florida State year, where they lose on the walk-off field goal by Georgia Tech and go 2-10 when they were supposed to like make the college football playoff. And then last year, it's Kansas State losing to Iowa State and Avery Johnson's dad and brother fighting in the slop outside the stadium. And Kansas State had to fire their coach at the end of last year. Like Chris Kleiman was like crying out the door out of his press conference, leaving the team after he was fired, basically, or probably before he was fired. Neither here nor there. The point is, the season goes horribly, horribly wrong for whoever loses that game. And the stock has never been lower on North Carolina, which makes me think they could do something interesting, in that first game. And it always gets weird out in Ireland. So check back with me after week 0 in Ireland. If TCU loses that game, the new over-under is 3.5.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. The loser there has not recovered well. The good news for TCU is the weeks after that, you have a bye, and then it's Grambling State, Arkansas State, and then at UCF. Like, you should be able to climb your way back into that. But that North Carolina game, if you tell me the result of that, I think I have if TCU wins North Carolina, they're going over, I think, relatively easily. If they lose to North Carolina, I think they're going under. So whatever you think is going to happen in Dublin is probably where you're leaning here for TCU.
Yeah, your bet is determined in week 0. It's very similar to like Uncut Gems. Have you ever seen that, where Adam Sandler has the guys locked in the glass case and he has the parlay, the first being the tip-off, like winning the tip-off, and he's like, oh, we would have been screwed there if we lost that one. That's what your bet is like on TCU's over.
That's correct.
Hopefully you don't have a group of Russians in the glass case. That one.
Great movie.
Our producer Sam Moore is laughing. He says Uncut Gems is his comfort movie. He likes to watch Uncut Gems to wind down, which is the most insane take I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah. What other uppers do you use to wind down, Sam? My goodness, like, that is insane. Like pop an Adderall and go to sleep or something. That's crazy.
I watched Uncut Gems with my mom, which was not a fun experience because my mom gets confused at movies a lot, and Uncut Gems is a very confused. She had no idea what the hell was happening. Yeah, that whole movie.
That's a funny one to watch with your mother.
Okay, let's round it out in the Power 4 ranks with Baylor. They're over under 6.5. Craven, I'll gotta be honest, I don't have notes written down for this one because I think they're going under, but you could also tell me they go 10-2, and I'd say okay because I don't know how to predict Dave Aranda anymore.
Yeah. Maybe this is a 2021 type season where everything aligns, the defense gets better, DJ Lagway hits, and the Bears go 9-3, 10-2, and are kind of as you mentioned earlier about the Big 12. Like, there's always a team that comes out of nowhere to win this thing. It was Baylor in 21, it was TCU in 2022, Oklahoma State got to the Big 12 championship game in 2023, Arizona State in 2024, and so. There's going to be a team that comes out of nowhere and pops, and maybe that is Baylor. I am just not going to put any of my hard-earned money on that outcome. Like, DJ Lagway throws too many interceptions in an offense that last year, Sawyer Robertson threw too many interceptions down the stretch. And when the offense doesn't score 40-plus points, Baylor had no chance. And maybe Clanderman comes in and fixes that Baylor defense, and they become, a top 4 or 5 unit in the Big 12, and that's great. We're all rooting for the Bears. If we're talking about projection and predicting what's going to happen in 2026, I think the most likely scenario is Baylor's a 500 team, maybe a little bit under it, and Dave Aranda is out by the end of the season. I think that is the most likely outcome here for Baylor, but that doesn't mean there aren't other outcomes that could come true. It's just hard to bet on them.
It feels like Baylor's over-under is the clearest demarcating line of you go under this, you're fired probably before the season even concludes. If you go over this, you're probably safe. I know we talked about Sark. If he goes under, he might not be the Texas coach. I don't think Texas would fire him if they went 9-3 again. I mean,
no,
there have been crazier things that have happened, but that would not be smart.
I don't think Sark is going to be put on the hot seat. I think Sark is going to take himself out of a situation he's not enjoying
You can hit the eject button.
Right. I think he's just going like, look, they're trying to take away offensive play calling. Like they are demanding too much. Like I'm going to go kind of restart the clock here. I think for Aranda, he wouldn't be, and this isn't speaking out of turn, like Dave Aranda wouldn't be the head coach at Baylor if Mac Rhodes had not lost his job. Right. If there is no scandal with Mac Rhodes as the athletic director at the end of last year, Dave Aranda isn't the head coach at Baylor. If the Mac Rhodes thing had happened in August and they had a new AD by the end of the season, Dave Aranda wouldn't be the head coach at Baylor. And so it would be a awesome, fun story if Baylor turns this thing around, goes 8-4, 9-3, 10-2. It has a great season. I just, you look around at college football and that rarely happens. Like rarely does the coach on his ninth life figure it out, kumbaya, fairy tale ending. Like this isn't a Disney movie. Mm-hmm. Aranda loves Disney movies, by the way, but this isn't a Disney movie. And I think it's more likely that Baylor kind of flounders around and the new AD has enough time to kind of look around and go, hey, it's time to make a change. You started Auburn in week 1. That's going to be an important one. If you can go there, it's not at Auburn, it's in Atlanta, but it's basically a road game. If you go there and you beat them, then all of a sudden, the schedule opens up for you. But I don't know. I have a hard time predicting that. And then you look at the last, 3 games of the season, it's at BYU, Texas Tech, at Houston.
Yikes.
So I just, there's a TCU game mixed in there, Arizona State. Their schedule's not awful, but I don't know, man. Are you, I'm not saying you, Carter, but like any of you listening out there, you really going to put $100 on Dave Aranda saving his job and going 8-4, 7-5? Like I'm not.
Yeah. It's basically putting in a call sheet bet. Essentially, those prediction markets where you can bet on literally everything and people are just throwing away money, right? I'm not being so harsh. Actually, I am going to be that harsh. It's not a smart bet to bet over right now. You're kind of you're almost doing it as a bit of like, look how daredevil I am to do. Well, that.
And I think honestly, like maybe this is too deep in the woods for the show in terms of betting. If you believe that, if you think Baylor is going to have this step back year, Dave Aranda is going to save his job and all that kind of stuff, find an alt line and do it at above 7.5 or above 8.5 and like really bet on Baylor to have a big season. You can get like plus 300 on that and really make some money. Like that is probably the way to do it because I think this is one of those either or situations. I don't see a 6-6 or 7-5. I see a 3-9 or 9-3 for Baylor. Like the upside is there. If the quarterback and the DC hit, Baylor could be the surprise team of the Big 12, or this thing could fall apart by October 15th.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you.
There's not a ton of middle ground for me.
When you were saying how Dave Aranda loves Disney movies, I thought about him and Mac Rhodes last year and thought this is actually the Batman movie where Dave Aranda was Bane with Mac Rhodes. He said, they expect for one of us in the Wreckage Brother. And guess who's back in 2026? Yeah. Verbal meme. When you're heading to Denton for game day, make it more than just 4 quarters of football. Make it a weekend to remember. Discover Denton's vibrant downtown square, amazing food scene, live music every night, and hotels that put you close to all the action. Whether it's mean green football or just a Texas getaway, Denton is where hip intersects with historic. Plan your visit now at discoverdenton.com. All right, let's go to G6 win totals. Rapid fire. They're not out yet. Let's just guess what the line's going to be. Craven, I want to start with Texas State. They've gone 8-5, 8-5, 7-6 in the GJ Kinney era. I feel like if it's not now to break through that glass ceiling and go 9-10 wins, it's never with all they're bringing back. What do you think the win total is going to be?
I think it's going to be 6.5.
Ooh, I put 7.5. Okay, so we're right there. I'm a little higher, though.
The non-conference schedule, pretty tough. You got at Texas, you got UTSA, you got North Texas. And then it's just the travel to me inside the Pac-12 and how they're going to handle that. You got to remember, they've been bad in October under G.J. Kinney, so you're going to have to figure that out. But here are the Pac-12 road games for Texas State. At San Diego State, at Boise State, at Oregon State, and then the flex at the end of the year, which is probably going to be Colorado State. That is a lot of travel for the Bobcats. And so, one, you have to fix the kind of midseason lull that you've had the previous couple of years under G.J. Kinney. You have a tough non-conference, including a UTSA team that you've beat 2 years in a row that are going to be ultra motivated for that game. Who knows what North Texas is going to be? But for me, it's just how do you navigate that travel? How do you bet on them being better in a tougher conference than they've been in the Sun Belt? That's why I land at 6.5. I think 7.5 is definitely on the table, but I think it's going to be 6.5.
You talking about Oregon State jogged my memory when we were talking about Texas Tech's non-conference schedule, and I was like, I remember Texas Tech's non-con was not great. They're playing Oregon State, and I was looking them up, like, how did Oregon State do last year? And it came up with second in the Pac-12. I said, oh, not bad. And then they saw they were 2-10 and forgot there were 2 teams in the Pac-12 last year. So, yeah, I think Texas State can hang physically and as a team, but the travel, you're right, is not great. Okay, let's go on to North Texas now. You mentioned who knows what the hell North Texas is going to be. They've got the most newcomers out of probably anybody in college football. I just threw a dart at the board and said 6.5 because Neil Brown has the group of 6 experience, and I think he's a good coach. So I put it like around bowl game, probably.
Yeah, I think it's going to be 5.5 over for a bowl game, under if they miss one. Speaking of non-conference schedules that are tough, here is Neil Brown's introduction to head coach at North Texas. At Indiana, home to UNLV, at Texas State.
Ugh.
I mean, 0-3 probably likely, at least from a betting standpoint, right? Like they are going to be underdogs in all 3 of those football games. When you get into conference, you go to Navy, you go to UTSA, you go to Tulane. So if you start 0-3 and then you lose those 3 road games, you're 6-6 at best. And so I believe this is going to be 5.5. Maybe it creeps up to 6.5. To me, this point of success, the marker of success for the Mean Green in 2026 is a bowl game. If they can make a bowl game, get to 6-6, successful year. If they go under that, I think Mean Green fans are going to feel slightly disappointed. But the schedule is rough. Like that, last year's schedule was cake, right? Mm-hmm. Like last year's schedule was as good as you could hope for, and the Mean Green took advantage of it. They got to the American Championship game. They were 1 win away from reaching the college football playoff. This year's schedule is the complete opposite. You have so many new faces on the staff, so many new faces on the roster, and your reward for your best season ever is to go start at Indiana and Kurt Signetti. And does that leave them unhealthy the rest of the year? Like we have seen a lot of these G6 programs, like UTSA a couple years ago went into Texas and walked out with like 17 injuries. Mm-hmm. Like it can just leave you battered and bruised. And so what does North Texas even look like by the time they get to the American after that non-conference schedule? It is a tough year. And I hope North Texas fans kind of realize that context and don't take their record as an indicator of what this program can be, because this is a tough year one.
You're right. 6-5 was too high. It's definitely 5.5, and I think I'm going under on that. I think North Texas goes 5-7. You heard it here first. Clip that, Sam. We'll play that when they go 10-2 somehow at the end of next season. Okay, Rice. First year under Scott Abel, last year 5-8. Want to see some marked improvement for the team in year 2? I put 5.5 because over/under is improvement, 6-6.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it'll be 5.5, maybe 4.5, just because remember, this is so much about perception, and the perception for national bettors is typically Rice not good, right? And so like maybe it's a little bit lower. You can, we took advantage of it last year. I think we both took the Owls over because I think they were 3.5 and they smashed it, right? They went a game and a half over, which is smashing it in betting terms. And so what I'm not sure of, again, is the schedule. They play at Notre Dame, Western Michigan, and at Fresno State in non-con. For those who don't pay attention to a lot of G6 football, Western Michigan and Fresno State pretty good. And then you got UTSA at East Carolina. I think the Pirates are kind of the trendy underdog, win the American this year because there's so much turnover at the head coaching positions. But here are the last 4 games for Rice. At North Texas, Tulane, at Temple, Army. Like it's a tough slate. It is a tough slate for the Owls. I think it's going to be 4.5, 5.5 is what the over is going to be. Over/under is going to be.
Last American Conference team, UTSA, the Roadrunners, back-to-back 7-6 seasons. I put the over/under hypothetically at 7.5.
I think that's a good place to put it. So much of this is going to come down to what that Texas State game looks like, what you think Colorado State under Jim Mora Jr. is going to be in this year one. They go to at Texas State, at Texas, then they get Colorado State at home after a really cool week one game with UTRGV, which will be fun for those in San Antonio.
Is Eddie Lee Marburger still quarterbacking UTRGV?
No, I think he's done. But they'll put up points. Like Travis Bush's team's going to put up points. Travis Bush was part of the first staff at UTSA under Larry Coker. A lot of what UTRGV has done to start their program has been mirroring what UTSA did to start there. So this is kind of a cousins going to a fight type situation. The Alamo Dome parking lot, by the way, you're not going to find better food. Before you combine the UTSA and UTRGV fans, like you will find some good smelling food walking around before that game. So that'll be a good one. The nice thing for UTSA here is they don't play Army. And Army has been really the bugaboo within the conference for the Roadrunners. What's so hard to predict with UTSA is the road woes. I think they're, off the top of my head, I think they're 3-10 on the road since the start of 2024. But here's the good news, Carter. In conference play, their road games are Rice, Tulane, FAU, UAB. Tulane, obviously, difficult one. You could lose that on a neutral site. But those other three games, Rice, FAU, UAB, UTSA should be favored there and maybe get over their road woes situations. And that's what this is going to come down to. I think it's going to be 6.5, 7.5, somewhere in there. And what you believe the Roadrunners are in 2026 is what you think that they can do on the road. If you believe they can put that behind them, I think UTSA can win 8 games. If you believe that they're going to lose to teams that they shouldn't on the road, like they have the last 2 years, including a Rice team in 2024, then I think 6-6 is right back on the table for UTSA.
What do you think is going to happen? And sorry if you already said this. My audio is kind of going in and out a little staticky. I think Sam heard me shit talking Uncut Gems and decided to tank my audio. What do you think is going to happen, Craven? And Sam, are we good, or it's probably just on my end? We're good.
My first run through, I think I have them at 7-5, 8-4.
Yeah.
I got them losing to Texas State, losing to Texas. But then after that, it's like Tulane is probably the only game they won't be favored in the rest of the way. They'll be favored at home to Colorado State. They'll be favored at Rice. South Florida at home is an interesting one. Like they're going to have a huge budget, but they have a brand new coach, brand new quarterback. Navy at home, probably a toss-up. As I mentioned, at Tulane, at FAU. North Texas, you get Tulsa at home. So I think the schedule is relatively favorable for UTSA. And then the hard part here is you just have no idea what's going to be true at the top of the American Conference. Like there's just so many new coaches, so many new players. Who knows what the American is going to look like by the time the season ends?
Who knows what the American's going to look like? Who knows what Conference USA is going to look like? That is where we have our final 2 Texas teams, Sam Houston and UTEP. I gave them the same over-under win total, Craven. You want to take a guess as what I put?
2.5.
3.5. Did you have 2.5, or were you just saying I was going to go really low?
Well, both.
Either or.
Both. I think Sam Houston's win total is going to be higher than UTEP's. I think Sam Houston's going to be 3.5 or 4.5 because of the Conference USA bump. They get games at home, year 2 under a head coach. Like I think that raises to 3.5, 4.5. I think UTEP's might be 2.5. UTEP, I don't know, man. Like they've replaced pretty much their whole staff. Like I don't know. Go look at what UTEP's staff turnover has been. It's been almost every single coach on that staff is new. You lose your quarterbacks, and the offense hasn't been great anyway. And 2 of your first 3 games are at Oklahoma and at Michigan. We talked about like what North Texas is going to look like after they play at Indiana. Like, do the Miners even survive those 2 games? Like Kyle Whittingham's Michigan is going to be a hammer. Like Oklahoma under Brent Venerables is a hammer. Like those are teams that don't just beat you on the scoreboard. They beat your ass. Like they beat you up. And I just don't know if UTEP is capable of handling those 2 games over a 3-week period and then walking into a new conference of the Mountain West that is much tougher than Conference USA. I don't know. I got UTEP winning 3 or 4 games, and I'm usually a pretty good grader on the Texas schools. Probably give them a game or 2 more than what the outside public does. So I can see UTEP's over and under being 2.5. I think I would take the over at 2.5, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's 2.5, maybe 3.5. I don't think it's over 4.
That's on me, by the way. Left hand up. UTEP's in the Mountain West now, what they've wanted for so long, out of Conference USA with more regional rivals, because we forget how west UTEP and El Paso is in the state of Texas. But they wanted some more positive momentum going to that conference, Craven. They didn't get it last year. They're sure as hell not going to get into non-conference play against those teams like you mentioned. And this is going to be the third offensive coordinator under Scotty Walden. And I know Scotty Walden's one calling the plays, but still not a great sign for that offense that they keep having to have all that staff turnover, like you mentioned.
And third defense coordinator.
And yeah, wow. It's been off the field. It was going well early. The recruiting was back-to-back top classes in the Conference USA. On the field results have not followed. And it feels like this year is worse vibes than either the previous 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, like, compare them with Sam Houston, who is bringing back their play caller on offense, their play caller on defense, and their starting quarterback. And UTEP is only bringing back their play caller on offense for an offense that hasn't been very good. And so, like, where are the improvements against a schedule that is tougher? At least Sam Houston has a navigating schedule where they've played against these kind of teams before. And they get to be at home. Like, I just think there's momentum at Sam Houston in a way that there's not at UTEP. I trust a team to play against the New Mexico States and the Western Kentuckys and Kennesaw States of the world more than I do, the North Dakota States and the New Mexicos and the Hawaiis of the world. Like, Mountain West is a step up for UTEP, a UTEP team that has question marks on the staff and on the roster. I think their over-under is going to be a game lower than Sam Houston's.
Well, that's going to do it for our win total projection show. Some of the schools in Texas have already started spring football practice. Craven the Magazine Tour is getting ready to kick off. You're traveling all over the state. Any closing thoughts before we head on out of here and get you an ice pack, maybe a thermometer, and close the door, turn the lights off, and get snuggle up for the rest of the day? It was your flu game.
Yeah, it was the flu game. Not feeling all that great, but we made it through. You got to play. You got to play injured. We cover college football. Not allowed to call out for a cold. So we made it through. Great, good mid-March thing. But it's spring break for most of the colleges this week. So spring practice is on a halt, or they start the following week. And then, I get in the truck and go pretty much everywhere across the state, starting March 30th at Texas State, which is a Monday. That's my first stop, Texas State, and then UTSA. And then we're off from there.
Yeah, so when all the Texas Tech fans hop in the YouTube comments and get mad about us picking them under 11.5, just remember we came ill today. We didn't ask. We took no shortcuts, just like your team in the weight room.
Yeah, that's right. And I will be up there April 10th if anybody wants to meet me at like Blue Star or something like that. We can. Pretty easy to find.
Well, until then, for senior writer Mike Craven, I am Carter Yates signing off for the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. We'll see you next time.